We are here with another episode of Behind the Scenes Prospects Corner by Just Baseball Media. We have an incredible interview with Luke Berryhill of the Houston Astros. But first, as always, we'd like to kick it off going over the team's farm system. So today we have Spencer Morris from Crawfish Boxes here to talk about the Houston Astros farm system. So Spencer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. Really excited to dive deep into the Astros farm system. The first question I'm going to ask you, I usually kick it off with what's the state of the overall farm system, but the recent trade that the Astros made to get Justin Verlander by sending Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford out, who's your number one prospect in the organization?
Well, when I ranked it a couple weeks ago, I went with Luis Baez. I think I would stick with that. I think anytime you see a guy go into full season ball as a teenager and perform, that demands a lot of attention. I wasn't. I was a little slow to buy in on him like last year after he put up big numbers in rookie ball. He was a little older at that level, but to come into low A at 19, just immediately hit for power, show a really solid approach. I moved him up pretty quickly from there. But I mean, I think there are four guys at the top who are sort of in the same tier, um, with Jacob Melton, Zach DeZenzo being right there, as well as Bryce Matthews, their new first round pick. So if anybody gave me any of those four names, I really wouldn't push back too much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good crop there at the top. Just kind of turning into what's your feelings on the overall sense of the farm system? Right after you lost those top two guys in Gilbert and Clifford, and you had a little bit of restocking with the MLB draft. Where would you say that the kind of Astros farm system sits right now?
Near the bottom, if not at the
Yeah.
bottom. I mean, you got to kind of just give it an honest assessment. I think if you still had Gilbert and Clifford there, you could rank them a fair few spots higher. But for me, like that's two top 100 guys.
Yeah.
I wasn't in love with that trade. Hopefully, they win a World Series and it you can write it off. But yeah, that was definitely a tough loss if you're focused on the farm system for sure.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked with the trade just because I wasn't expecting Verlander to kind of net two top guys, one in the top 100, and Clifford, who's basically started to make his way into the top 100 for many prospects lists. One guy I really kind of want to touch on that I know Aram, who runs the Call Up podcast at Just Baseball, really loves is Joey Loperfido. Can you give us a little bit of background on Loperfido? I know he's kind of a little bit of an underrated the radar guy, but seems to be a guy that's kind of taken off this year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of his. They drafted him out of Duke as kind of like a pseudo senior sign in the seventh round. And unlike, most senior signs, he was kind of like he had this sort of interesting projectable tools
Mm.
profile coming out of college. He's got like a big, long frame, but he was already pretty strong, and I think he's gotten stronger since he got drafted. It was just that the approach he had in college was kind of like slappy, a lot of stuff the other way, but he's really found a power stroke, and he has the raw power to support it. So I think just sort of changing up his approach at the plate has really gone a long way for him. And he's a guy who can play the infield and the outfield. So I think he definitely has a fit in the major leagues as a utility player of some kind. On the infield, it's probably really only first and second base, but that's still meaningful versatility. Um, he's not going to hit for the highest contact rate, but he takes a good number of walks, and I think now he has the power to support kind of um, mid-range contact
Mm.
skills. So yeah, I think he's going to have a pretty significant big league career, and I think I rated him fourth overall in the system currently.
Yeah, I mean he's a guy that's really intriguing. Another guy I really like, one you mentioned, is Zach Denzenzo, someone who's kind of cut his strikeout rate out a little bit. I
Mhm.
looked at the data. It seems like a lot of the exit velocities are kind of insane, but he's only kind of tapped into 6 home runs this year. Well, actually 10. Sorry, it's 6 in Double A and then 4 in High A. What's your sense on Denzenzo? Is he's a guy that we should be on all of our radars?
I think so. I mean, for the first part of the season, he was just unreal. I mean, he hit
Hmm.
400 in High A, then he came up to Double A, and he was hitting 400 again for a while. He ended up getting hurt, and that seemed to kind of take him out of his groove a little bit. But yeah, when he was in college at Ohio State, he was one of the top exit velocity guys in D1, hitting balls like 118, 119 at the college level. I mean, with the metal bats, sure, but um, he was out ahead of everybody in the country, so that's got to catch your eye. Um, he had some pretty significant contact issues in college, but coming into the Astro system, he changed his swing a little bit, and he also really cut his chase rate. So both of those things seem to make a pretty huge difference, as you'd imagine. Um, it's fair to point out that the exit velocity hasn't really translated into too many homers yet. I think for me that's a bigger question going forward than
Hmm.
like the overall swing and miss. Even though he has been swinging and missing more lately, I'm chalking some of that up to him missing so much time.
Yeah.
Um, so if he can figure out how to, loft the ball a little more consistently, I think he's a guy who has an outside shot to play every day. He is, an older guy, but he's improved a lot very quickly this year. And there's really only a couple more things to iron out for him to get there.
Yeah, that's one thing I was gonna. You mentioned that Zenzo's a older guy. I think when you look at the Astros top 30 prospects, a lot of them, a lot of them are
Yeah.
in the mid 20s. I think that's maybe probably one of the things that you mentioned, that they're near the kind of lower end, and that could be part of the reason, right? You have all these kind of guys that are approaching 24, 25, 26 years old that you would expect to either be in AAA or in the big leagues at this point.
Yeah, I mean, part of their draft strategy over the last few years has been to draft a lot of college seniors.
Yeah.
It's like to allow them to, go higher on the younger guys that they really like. But they've managed to find some real prospects out of like their senior sign group, which is good. Um, they just need to start hitting on some of these younger upside guys as well for the system to really catch up. And of course, there's the fact that they're competing and trading away prospects and graduating prospects as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the draft too. I know you had Bryce Matthews with the big get there, right? But
hmm
what are, in terms of replenishing the system? Are there some guys in the draft that maybe, unlike Bryce Matthews, that might be a little bit under the radar that you're really excited about?
Yeah, some of the I'm a fan of the pitching they came away with. I put Alonzo Treadwell straight into my top 10. I think if he can stay healthy, there's a lot of starter traits there. Being a guy who's 6'8", but with really exceptional body control for somebody that size, hasn't pitched very much the last few years. Missed his senior year of high school, and then was pitching out of the bullpen, so not many innings. Um, Jake Bloss in the following round has really big stuff that's on an upward trajectory. And then one who's a little more under the radar, but some of the other people who follow the Astros are really excited about was Ethan Pecco in the 6th round, I believe, who's got some really intriguing pitch data. Um, Showed really well in off-season ball. He was just transferred up to low A, so hopefully we get to see a little bit of him against some full season competition this year. I think those are kind of the names that stick out. The prep guys that they were able to sign, I think, are all very intriguing, but they're sort of three different flavors between Ochoa, Hueso, and Jaworski. Um, Wazo and Jaworski are younger, much younger guys, 17-year-olds who are still kind of growing into their bodies, but
Hmm.
are more of feel plays. Whereas Ochoa is built like he was drafted out of college, and maybe they have to work on the feel a little bit. But I think there's definitely intriguing upside with each of them, and they got the Astros seem to feel the same as indicated by the bonuses that they got.
Yeah, the one you mentioned, I'm really interested to see is Jake Bloss. I live in the DC area, and he went to
Yeah,
Georgetown. And I remember I was doing live looks for Prospects Live, and I remember going to a Georgetown game, and I'm like, I've never even heard of this guy. And I've been covering the
yeah.
MLB draft for a while, and just sat in the stands, and this guy's blowing like 95, and I was like, this is not what I expected from Georgetown.
Yeah, no, I was I only became aware of him this past season, and it was kind of like, oh wow, this guy's stuff really came on this year.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of another type of player you tend to see the Astros gravitate towards is they don't seem to mind taking a guy who's sort of a late breakout with a shorter track record. They've taken a lot of those types in the last handful of drafts.
Yeah, and that I think he was a grad transfer too, so he's
Hmm.
really up there in age. So now the last question I always ask, just for people who are really into prospects, maybe they like it for fantasy reasons, baseball card collecting, whatever it is. Are there two under the radar guys? Maybe we've talked about them already. Maybe one on the pitching side and one on the hitting side that people really should be paying attention to.
On the hitting side, I would probably go with Kenny Gomez. He's had a lot of injury trouble so far in his career, but when he has been on the field, he's performed really well. People who are in the organization or familiar with what's going on in the organization seem to really rave about him from a makeup standpoint. Um, I think there's good upside between the hit tool and the speed and enough power to be impactful. Very young, he's going to need a lot of time, but I think if you're looking for the guys who might be everyday players in the system, he's the one I would bet on who's not already ranked right up at the top. And then for the pitchers, I would have to go with Andrew Taylor. Not the most under the radar. He's been ranked fairly high, depending on which list you're looking at, but I ranked him at 7th in the system. I think if you watch him pitch this year versus when he was in college, it's pretty clear that the Astros have emphasized developing his breaking stuff a lot this season when he's really more of a fastball changeup
Mhm.
guy. Um, and he still performed really well, not throwing his best stuff. And I think you have seen the slider and the curveball improve over the course of the year. So whenever the Astros feel comfortable going to more of like an optimal pitch mix for him, I think he's really going to put up some big numbers. And I think they could find more velocity at some point with him as well. So I think he can be a number 4 starter. Perhaps if you really want to shoot the moon with him a little bit more than that, I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is a really awesome overview of the Astros farm system. But before we turn over the interview with Luke Berryhill, got to ask, besides being an 80 grade country singer, what do you have on Luke Berryhill?
Well, he's a good catcher, good receiver, and he's definitely got some big power. His strikeout numbers have been a little all over the place, but um, pitchers seem to like throwing to him, and he does kind of counteract the contact issues with enough patience and power to be an exciting at bat at the bottom of the lineup.
Sounds like a good potential backup catcher there in the
Yeah.
future in Houston. Well, Spencer, I can't thank you enough for joining us. But before we turn it over to that interview with Luke Berryhill, where can people find you and all the work, incredible work you're doing?
Crawfish Boxes once a week on Wednesdays, at least right now. The day has changed before. It might again. Twitter at Prospect Spencer. And then during draft season, sometimes diamonddreamsblog.com. That's just a draft blog where I'll throw some stuff up intermittently that's sort of more generally focused as opposed to just Astros.
Awesome. Well, everybody make sure to check out Spencer's work. Spencer, we'll definitely have to have you on in the future if we get another Astros guy on. Hopefully, the farm system will be somewhere out in the middle or improving by then. But without further ado, we want to get you over to that interview with Luke Berryhill. I'm your host, Jared Perkins. As always, we have another incredible guest here today, Luke Berryhill with the Houston Astros. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. You have an awesome story about your playing career, but also the music career that you've developed outside of baseball that we'll get to in a little bit. But just for the viewers who don't know you, give a little bit of background about yourself, kind of how you made it in baseball, but also in music.
Sure. Yeah. I'm 25. I grew up in Canton, Georgia. Just played baseball since I was 3. Uh, Went to Georgia Southern University out of high school. Was there for a year, and I got hurt. Transferred to junior college in Tennessee, Walter State, and went to South Carolina for a year. Then got drafted by the Reds, and got traded to the Astros about a year later. And that brings us to now.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk a little bit about making that transition to JUCO, right? I worked coaching baseball for a while, and a lot of high school kids are like, I don't want to go the JUCO route. They just don't want to go it. Talk about how that kind of played a role in your career and really kind of catapulted you to go into a big D1 school as well.
Oh, I hear you, man. JUCO wasn't anything I thought about out of high school either. I always heard like, yeah, you got to go D1, you got to go to the biggest school you can, kind of thing. And then I actually got hurt in redshirted my freshman year, and so coming back from the injury, I wasn't nearly as sharp as I needed to be to get sufficient playing time. And so I was like, you know what, I've heard good stuff about JUCO from some of my friends that went there, and so let's give it a shot. And it was definitely the best decision I ever made. I knew I would have probably just wasted the next season, probably not playing much at all. So it was good to go to JUCO and get my legs back under me. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot that season and made some good friends too.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of players we've interviewed that go on the JUCO route. They're like, the friends you kind of make at the JUCO level are completely different than any other level. You just get super close to those guys.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. So kind of talking about your transition to the University of South Carolina, then making it to pro ball. You really have this passion for music outside the game as well. I think the biggest thing that we find from a lot of players that we interview on the podcast is they kind of get a lost sense of identity in baseball. So I really kind of want to dive into how you started writing music and playing music, and kind of how does music really give you a separation from the game, right? Like when you have those good or bad performances on the field, you can kind of probably go back to music, but love to hear from your kind of perspective.
100%. Yeah. So I actually grew up around music. My dad was a professional country singer for a while back in the 80s and 90s. And he had bands all when I was growing up. I'd spend almost every weekend at like a Harley dealership or some like big club somewhere watching him perform. It was pretty cool. So instilled a love for music in me ever since I was young. And then when I got to high school, there was it's called the Mr. River Ridge pageant. It's supposed to be like an entertaining male beauty pageant kind of thing. I went to River Ridge, and so I got sucked into doing that. It's for charity, and I had to do a talent, and I was going to tell stupid jokes or something. But then everyone kept telling me I needed to sing. I guess people hear me singing when I'm walking down the hallway or something. That people always said, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." So the day before, I was like, you know what, I'm going to sing. I sang for my parents for the first time ever, and then the next day I was singing in front of 500 people up on stage, and that was nerve-wracking for sure. I feel like getting that out of the way, I can sing in front of anybody at this point. Yeah, it was wild. Like when I was walking up on stage, my hand was shaking so bad, and it was dead quiet in there. I heard a girl in the front row say, "Oh, poor thing, he's shaking." And it's like, dude, like this is not the way.
Don't need that now.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, after that, I mean, it went well, and I started getting a little more confident, started singing a little bit more. When I got to college and I had that injury I told you about at Georgia Southern, I was having to stay at home while all my friends and my teammates were out, playing the season, and so I was like, you know what, might as well pick up guitar. And I think that was probably the best decision I ever made with music. And so ever since then, started playing gigs at home during the off season, try to make a little extra money. I have a really good time doing that too. So, yeah, hope that answered your question. I don't remember
No,
what the question was, but
no, I was gonna say I think that's awesome just because one, I have to imagine that playing in front of people, right, gave you some of that confidence. Like when you're playing music, you're basically, unless you're in a band, you're on your own if you're like a solo artist. Where if you're playing baseball, you're on a team sport. So like, yeah, the eyes are on you when you're at bat, but I'm sure like playing music and getting that confidence to play in front of all those people, did that kind of help translate into baseball where when you're at the plate, things like that, the nerves aren't there as much, or is there kind of some similarities there?
I see where you're coming from, but dude,
Yeah,
it's completely different.
yeah.
No, like you said, it's like being up on stage or whatever playing music. It's all you. If you mess
Hmm.
up one time, everyone knows it, and like everyone expects you to be perfect, kind of thing. With baseball, like everyone knows, oh, you're gonna strike out now and then. But music, like if you mess up a chord, everyone in the bar is gonna hear it, and so you really got to be on top of your stuff when you go out playing music. But I feel like it makes me more of a well-rounded kind of, I don't, mentally tough, I guess.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm struggling with baseball, I can just go to music and help me get my mind off it, and then it ends up helping me with baseball because I'm not so stressed about it, kind of thing. It's definitely helped my baseball career.
Yeah. I got to ask then. So, what was more nerve wracking, singing the national anthem in spring training or your first big league spring training at bat?
Probably the at bat at that point.
Yeah.
Dusty Baker was right there. All Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, they were all in the dugout. And so I was like, oh, I gotta try to impress these guys. But then, with singing the national anthem, I've done it a few times before, a couple times in college, a couple times over the last couple pro seasons, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on that. So I just put it in my head that I'm out there to have fun and hope everybody likes it. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have to ask, do you have a favorite song, a country song of all time?
Oh man,
I
I've
know
got
it's
to
hard.
say,
I love country too, so it's a hard to choose from.
dude, it is hard. Now one that I come back to a lot is called "A Bitter End" by Daryl Dodd.
Hmm.
He's a Texas artist. He's actually one of my buddies. But that's a beautiful song. So everyone listen, check that out. He's a good dude. But my favorite one to play, like if anyone asked me, just pick one up and play real quick, is "Dancer Home" by Cody Johnson.
That's cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So have you ever used one of your songs as a walk-up song?
I
One of
have
your own songs?
not. No. So speaking of that, we actually got a release date for my first song that I'm putting out.
Very
To
cool.
be July 21st. It's called "Dance on It." It's more of an upbeat, grooving country song. All my teammates that I played it for said, "Oh, you got to put that as your walk-up song whenever it comes out." And so I guess that's what I got to do now, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe we'll get to make that big league debut around the same time.
that would be sick.
We'll try to release this episode right around the same time. Maybe we can plug the song in there and the description and all that fun stuff, so we can get it in there for you.
Perfect. Perfect.
So I have to ask too, kind of as you developed your playing career here, what has been some of your greatest experiences while playing on the field that you've just really enjoyed, especially because you've been going through the minor leagues for a few years now? Do you have some moments that really kind of stick out to you?
Um, Really, the biggest moments were, I guess, whenever I got called up to the next level. That was the biggest thing. Um, like I still remember the day I got called up to Double A. Like it it was supposed to be a temporary spot, but then I guess someone else ended up getting hurt, and I ended up sticking up there. So I mean, it wasn't like a big deal at the moment.
Yeah,
I was kind of let down, but looking back, I was like, man, I should have been a little more excited about that, maybe. And just stuff like that. That I don't know. I haven't been on a team that's played for like any championships or anything in pro ball yet. I don't know. Just my fondest memories are just hanging out with the guys. I've made a lot of good friends since being with the Astros, and we're always having fun doing something. So
yeah, I love that too because we interviewed Jacob Turner. He was a former big leaguer for a while. He
okay.
talked about he's like the game ends, but like the relationships you get to make within the game, he goes, that's what makes it kind of the best. He's like, hey, I left the game and I'm like, okay, the game's done, but I still have all these relationships that I can kind of move forward with.
I feel that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of diving into the last couple of questions here. We always kind of ask like a fun one and a more serious one. While you're in like going back home and writing music or going back home just to visit family, do you have a go-to restaurant that you love? Absolutely have to hit it every time.
Moe's for sure. Moe's Southwest Grill. They don't have those out in Texas, as far as I can tell, and so that's one of the first places I hit when I go home. The R&M Hoagie Shop in downtown Canton, Georgia. They've been open since like the 70s. They make fantastic sandwiches. We're personal friends with the people that own it, and I try to go in there as much as I can. That's
awesome. I can't believe they don't have a Moe's in Texas. Like
I hear you, dude. Actually, and we flew in this morning at about 5 a.m. from Salt Lake City, and they had one in the airport, so I had to get it. It wasn't great because it's an airport, but
yeah,
it's still Moe's.
They even got them here in Maryland, so I was like,
really?
yeah, they got them all up here. So kind of diving into a couple of last questions. So for us, we want this to be a podcast where people kind of get to know the players behind the performances on the field, but we also kind of want it to be a lesson for like future guys who are coming up through the minor leagues and major leagues. What would you say if you had one piece of advice for a guy who might be going through some of the same journeys you did, having to overcome injuries or having to transfer to JUCO? What would be that one piece of advice to help them kind of keep pushing?
For me, the biggest thing I learned was that you only have one shot at your career. You have to do what's best for you. There's something to be said about loyalty, but if you're being loyal to a coach or a team that is holding you back from your potential, you gotta bet on yourself. Because if you stay there an extra year, you could lose that opportunity to maybe make it in pro ball or get drafted or something. You won't get the exposure that you need. That's my biggest thing. Just you got to bet on yourself. You gotta take any opportunity that you can. Not be a jerk about it and just leave on a whim every single team that you're on. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many colleges out there, right? If you're at the college level, there's going to be an opportunity to play somewhere, and if you're good enough at the game, like there's a spot somewhere for you. And I think it depends on like what you want to do, right? What level you want to be at. Just going into the last question, I guess for you, you've got baseball and music, two really big passions, right? One, you got the game of baseball that's full of failure. Music, I think the music industry too. I'm sure a lot of artists go through releasing music, coming up with failure, trying to get something that people will enjoy. What kind of keeps you motivated in both, right? To keep going and keep pushing. Like baseball, it's a long journey to get to the big leagues for a lot of guys. So what kind of motivates you on a daily basis to kind of just keep pushing forward?
Just the love of the game, honestly.
Yeah.
And with music, same thing. Like you said, it's an absolute grind to really get your career going. So if you don't love it, you're not going to last. Even past all the the early on failures and stuff like that. If you really love something, they say you don't work a day in your life, but you're going to work at it at some point. But I'd say just if you don't love it, you might just be wasting your time doing it. For me, I got lucky that I love baseball and music, so it makes it easy for me.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Luke, this has been an awesome interview. But one more time before we wrap it up, just let everybody know where to find you and the song when it comes out in July.
Sure. I'm on Instagram at verychill_Berryhill. Yeah, I know. And Twitter at verychill_Bhill. I don't tweet a lot, but sometimes. I've got a YouTube channel that I post on sometimes with some music stuff. Just search up Luke Berryhill music. And my first song will be coming out on iTunes, Spotify, should be just about everywhere. July 21st. It's called Dance on It. And then over the next couple months, I'll be having 2 more songs come out as well. So be on the lookout.
Awesome. Love it. And Luke, we're wishing you nothing but success in baseball, music, and just in life, man. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.